Greetings to you all. This is Living a Full Life Forum, a forum where our vision is a society of women, men, and families who have healthy souls and emotional stability, who are living fulfilled lives and reaching their highest potential in life. That is what we aspire for at Living a Full Life Forum, and that is our desire for you all. And so I welcome you so much to this episode of Living a Full Life Forum. I am so happy to be here today. I'm your host, Dr. Violet Kayom. And so how are you doing? I hope you are doing well. So let's remember that life is what we make it. And so let's make the best out of life, because we have one life to live and we have to live it to the fullest. Yes, so today we have a very good topic we are going to look at. Okay, and just like I introduced in the last episode that we had, that today we are going to share or discuss on how the health of our soul can make us influential. How the health of your soul will make you influential. And so I know there are many people who want to be influential. I'm almost sure that every one of us here want to be influential. We all want to make a difference in life. And so the state of our soul, the health of our soul, will largely determine to what extent we are going to influence many people. And so please stay tuned. Please do subscribe and inform your friends, inform your families, because the things we discuss here are fundamental. They are very important. And we may not have so many forums where we are able to discuss this. Some of these things are not taught in school. They are not given to us maybe when you go for a medical examination. They may not be in so many of the gatherings that we attend. And so this is a very good opportunity for us to improve ourselves so we can become better human beings and live our dreams while here. Okay, so let's go to the bottom of the matter. So one thing we have to know is that man is created as a social being. This means that there is that innate need in every human being to have relationships. You know, we all want to be accepted and we want to be around, around people. When there's a situation where someone says that for me, I am a loner, or I don't want people around me, or I can do on my own, many times it's not because they are actually fine. It's because there's something wrong at the soul level or at the spirit level, or something is just not right. Otherwise, any normal human being always wants, influence. They want to be around people. And that is what makes us fulfilled. That's what brings fulfillment in our lives. Okay. So if you have a season, in your life where maybe you are either in a school or at a workplace, for a certain duration of time, one of the things that will bring fulfillment at the end of your stay, or even when you leave, is how much influence you have had. So it's not all about, how much you've achieved in terms of, your academic performance, or how much you've achieved in terms of, the work you've done. Many times, what will bring the real fulfillment is how much lives you have actually influenced. And so it is very unfortunate when you finish a season in a place, and by the time you leave, or when you've left, there's just no single trail of you, in the whole place. There's nothing to show your existence in that place. That shows that you did not do a very good job in leaving imprints, in leaving, influences wherever you walked. And so you underutilized your season at that point of your life. And so we have to really always think and realize that we have to influence people. We have to influence society. That is what the meaning of success is. And I'm always impressed by this author I came across some time back, who defined success as not just the amount of wealth you have amassed for yourself. Success is not just how much you have risen up in society and acquired all, these titles. It is about the kind of influence, the lives you have influenced during that period, and the legacy you have left behind. Legacy is what really matters a lot. When I look at our medical practice and I think through, the end, that experience you have towards the end of the life. Because many times as you're treating a patient, especially the one who has a chronic condition, you may notice, when the situation is deteriorating and it's just a matter of time and the life will be ended. So you start preparing yourself. And one of the most difficult moments for any doctor or any medical personnel is around that time when you realize that your patient is actually on their way out. They're transiting to the next world. And so many times, you are preparing yourself and you know that one day you have to face the family. And one thing I've noticed about our patients at that point, they are not thinking about their land titles. Neither are they thinking about the $400 million deal they signed 2 weeks ago. At that time, they request, may I please see my family? May I please see my children? May I please see my wife? Or may I please see my husband? So they are trying to connect back with the important people in their lives. They are not thinking about, the skyscrapers they have built at that point. Because at that point, that is not what really matters. And so it makes us realize that actually, what matters when we come to the real meaning of life, many times it is really our interpersonal relationships. So when we reach that point that, now the patient is going, and as a doctor, I realize that now the heart rate has reduced and there is a need for aiding the breathing. The breathing is, coming down. So I rise up maybe as a team lead at that point, and there's a lot of noise and frenzy of activities, and it is now emergency time. So please bring the ambu bag, bring the other machine, bring this drug, bring the adrenaline. And at that point, we are trying to pump, air into this human being, and we are trying to give the drugs, and we are trying to massage the heart. We may put them on the machine, the defib machine, so that the heart is able to come back. And at that point inside me, I know that the next task I have to do is to face the family. And the family is looking at me, maybe behind them, and hoping and wishing, and they have all their trust in me. And at this point, I know I am losing the game, but I still have to face them. And so when all is done, and we realize that the heartbeat is no more, and I check the eyes, and I look in, and the pupils are dilated, a sign that there is no more life, it is a very difficult moment for me to take off those gloves, turn around to the family and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And many times they ask, do we need oxygen? Can we bring more drugs? Sorry, at this point, it makes me a bit emotional. And I'm like, you know what? He is gone. And within that moment, you realize that the people who are around are actually the people who mattered most, the relationships. And so it makes us come to realize that life is not all about completing schedules and amassing all the wealth and doing all this. Life is about the influence, the legacy that we leave behind. And that is why today we discuss how the state of your soul, how the health of your soul can actually make you very influential. And so I'm going to divide the discussion into 3 parts. For the first part, we are going to look briefly at the science. It's always good to go back to the roots of the matter. Know how the soul and the brain work when we are faced with, adverse situations, how they interconnect. And then the second part, we are going to look at the coping strategies of the soul when faced with, traumatic experiences. And then for the third part, we will look at, of course, the influence, the state of the soul now, and how it influences, your relationships with people, the interpersonal relationship. Okay, so let's go to the science of the matter. You see, just like I said in other presentations, this brain of ours has different parts that perform different functions. There is one particular part I've been talking about quite repeatedly, which is responsible for your emotions, for processing your thoughts, for your memory, for your mood, and your decision making. And so there are some 2 organs. One of them is called the amygdala, and the other one, the hippocampus. So I know these are medical jargons, but one thing I know with knowledge, when it is right knowledge, it is not toxic, neither is there an overdose of knowledge. So it's okay for you to know some of these things. So when you go to the consult room, you may also put in your word there. So the amygdala and the hippocampus. Yes, so these are very essential when it comes to processing the traumatic experiences we go through. Yes, so what happens is that when we face a difficult situation that hurts us a lot, whether physically or psychologically, or we are stressed over a long period of time, those parts of the brain that are responsible for processing such information end up having some changes in the way they function. So you find that they end up developing more of some tissues, a certain tissue called myelin. So more of that develops as opposed to the normal nerve cells, which we call neurons. Now, nerve cells are the ones that help us transmit, they help the body transmit information. So when the traumatic experiences, especially those that are of chronic type, so you find that there are dysfunctions such that there are fewer nerve cells in those areas. Now that leads to distortion in the shape of the brain and also the size of the brain. And so it ends up affecting, how information is processed. Now, that ends up sending impulses to the soul. And like we say, the soul is the part of our body or the part of the human being that consists of our emotions, it consists of our mind, and then, of course, our will. Yes, so imprints are sent, any traumatic experience, as that is going on in the brain, even the soul is receiving its input. So the mind is perceiving this, traumatic experience. And then the emotions are also reacting, and the will is putting forth something, a coping mechanisms, how to respond, as regards this offense. And so there's a number of traumatic experiences that would affect our soul state that end up resulting into effects, into issues with our interpersonal relationships. And so I'm going to really narrow down on some of those specific traumatic experiences. So there are those which are personal. There are some personal situations that you go through. For instance, you have someone around you, someone who is close to you, or a workmate or a boss who belittles you or doesn't seem to believe in you. And so you have that feeling of rejection. Or you may have faced some form of violence, whether verbal violence or physical violence. Sometimes it's just like you have faced some injustice. You should have been treated right and you are not treated right, or you are not given, your rights. And so you feel like you've been trampled down upon. Now that one forms imprints in your soul. Your memory is affected about that, and then also your emotions are affected. There are others which are inherited. Actually, there are some inherited traumatic experiences. A mother who has had a lot of, issues with anger or has really been hurt, some of those hormones and the, impulses can be transmitted to the unborn child. So it ends up becoming like something inherited. There are some situations where you find that you're from a family where, that family seems to have, specific issues with another family or another tribe. So they're all these negative, things that are happening because of the wounds that have been developed in the family over time. And somehow they're transmitted, unto you, even when you are not the first, you are not the one who primarily faced, that offensive situation. Then there's something I could call, the soul trauma by association. You may be in a group of people like who have had a traumatic experience with another group of people or another tribe. So somehow you join this group, and because they have these ill feelings about that tribe, then you end up picking it up. So it also gets embedded in you, and now it becomes a wound in your own soul. Then there are others where you find that I could call it like projected. You have projections where someone of a certain gender or a certain tribe or a certain race hurt you deeply. And so that situation passes. But whenever you see someone else of that gender or that race or that tribe that hurt you, then you kind of like project the anger towards them. You lump them up like, they were all part of the problem. Now, all those things get imprinted in our emotions, in our mind. And so the mind has a way in which it starts coping. In the short run, of course, there is what we call the fight or flight response. Okay? So the mind will now gauge, now this situation that I'm being or that is offending me, can I fight it? So when it realizes that it can actually put up a fight, so there will be this violence and aggression, towards that situation or towards a person. But when it weighs and realizes that this seems to be a giant that cannot be overcome, so it withdraws. So that withdrawal may be a physical withdrawal by running away, or an internal withdrawal. So you get subdued and you bow just because you can't put up a fight at that point. But it remains a wound. So as a situation, as time goes by, the mind will process all these things and put them in the subconscious, in that long-term memory, deep inside, so that at this point, you're not experiencing that pain. But it remains hidden there, and it remains still a wound. Okay, so now how does all this end up affecting how we relate? The moment we have those hidden experiences, those traumatic experiences, which haven't been refined, they haven't been dealt with, it forms some form of electromagnetic waves. There are some studies that have shown that the state of the heart, ends up, forming these electromagnetic waves that act like a magnet. When you have like a magnet, you find that this magnet may be able to attract some object, and then it repulses others, okay? It repels other objects. So that is how the heart ends up being. And that is why you find that there's some people you look at and you just get attracted to them. You just want to be with them. And you have not known them before. But there are others you look at and you withdraw. You just don't want to go close. So the heart speaks to the heart. When you have those electromagnetic waves that are stemming from the state of your soul, then there are some things it will attract, there are some things it will repulse. So that is why sometimes you may look at someone and you're like, I think that person doesn't like me. They haven't uttered a word, they haven't come close to you, but you feel it. Why? Because the heart is communicating. Now, of course, I do realize that sometimes there's misinterpretation, because when you're emotionally unstable, you've been wounded, you may end up being paranoid. You're just paranoid. You just think everyone is thinking wrong about you, and then that may not be. But many times, if you are in your stable state, actually that intuition may be right. That is why you can pick up someone who seems to have jealousy feelings towards you, or some degree of anger towards you. But now, all that one is as a result of the state of the heart. So the heart has these waves and it's speaking, and then you end up now picking different people's hearts also. So how is that important? How is that understanding important for us as we look at how to become influential? Okay, so now that we've realized that the heart actually does communicate to people and all that, so we should know that now anything you have whether inherited or suffered personally that is embedded in your heart that is negative is going to have effects on how many people you will influence. So if you have feelings of tribalism, you have a certain prejudice about a tribe, you know that it is in your heart. So however much you may act around people from that tribe, they will pick your heart. They will pick the state of your heart. They will pick those electromagnetic waves quickly, even before you utter a word. And so because your heart detests them, so your heart is blocked towards them. So what they will do also, they will block you. So you may try to talk to them, you may try to influence them, but they will be on their serious guard around you, because the heart is already wounded. That if you have other feelings of, jealousy towards someone, or anger, or bitterness towards someone that resembles another person who hurt you, then you know that that state of your heart will be picked by the other person. And so you block them. And in response, they also block you. So you may use your words, but the words may not really break that blockage that they have, that barrier they have created around you. So if you have been hurt by a certain gender and you have issues with that gender, then you find that you have blocked your heart, and so in response, the other will also block. So all these things end up creating blockages in us. And as long as there is a barrier, as long as there is a blockage, you know that you'll never break through completely to those people. Whatever you're talking, whatever influence you're having will only be surface. You'll never succeed in drawing them completely close to you. You see, there are many people in the world who have been hurt generally. And so the first time you meet someone and you're interacting with them, you may assess them, you judge them by how they look, how they are dressed up. Then from then on, you move deeper. You start trying to pick what is in their soul through the way they are looking at you, through the way they are talking, and basically their mannerisms. So many people have been hurt already, and they are on their guard to prevent anyone from hurting them further. So the moment they pick any negative signal, you just know they will close off in their hearts. So they may still smile around you, they may still talk, but you may never really break through as long as they're still picking some negative signals from you. Okay? And so that all comes from the state of our hearts. You see, this life is very interesting, and the world is very interesting. The world will never allow you to go beyond some boundaries if it knows you're going to offend many other people. There's a way in which you end up limiting yourself within those confines, because just like natural selection, that science of natural selection, which chooses, the stronger, the survival of the stronger and all that. So you find that also here, so life will confine you. You will not have many boundaries, many wide boundaries to go out to, because the state of your heart is limiting you. And so there are all these confines in life that will not allow you to spew your negativity onto others. One of my heroes and heroes of Africa, Nelson Mandela, his story really gives a very, important example of how the state of the heart can actually make you very influential. I was listening to one of the great orators, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, who shared his experience when he went to visit Nelson Mandela, Madiba. So he said that when he reached where he was, they shook hands. And so he shook his hands and held his hands in a very firm hand grip for some few seconds. And Dr. Miles Monroe in his heart was like, oh my God, these hands are very hard and rough. What is this? And of course, His Excellency Nelson Mandela knew what was going on in the young man's, mind. And so he was like, my son, what is it? Then he just smiled and like, you see, these hands, which are rugged and rough, this is the price of freedom. And he went ahead to explain what he had experienced in prison, while he had been put there unjustly. He spent a lot of time hammering these stones, breaking the stones. And at the beginning, his hands were painful, but it reached a point when the hands became very hard and callous, became very hard because of the repeated torture and the work he was going through. And then he lost sensation in his hands. But at the end of his prison stay, we see a heart that was completely refined. Because when he walked out of prison, when Nelson Mandela walked out of the prison, he had two things that stand out for me very well. The first is his conviction of what right is was not shaken at all by the persecution in the prison walls. So he still knew that treating a human being as a black because they are black and treating them like they're inferior is not right. And so he stood to that, no matter what, they did to him. So his conviction stood as the strength of his character. The second is, when he came out, he He had all the power to revenge, but instead of revenge, he chose the path of forgiveness. And so he forgave. And when he forgave, one man could say that, oh, what a sign of weakness. But you see, that forgiveness that he did earned him the respect of the whole world. At that point when he said, you know what, it is time to forgive, you know what the world did? The world stood up and clapped and clapped and clapped. And so instead of choosing the other path that seemed to be convenience, that would appease his ego and pay back, whatever pain he had gone through, he chose this path of forgiveness. Because when you look at it really, the pain he went through during all those prison years and the injustices, even if he was to take the path of revenge, would that revenge actually, pay back? I don't think. So sometimes we have to choose the path, however difficult it is, the path of forgiveness, just because it brings more life. And what is right, and what is wrong. When you choose the path of forgiveness, what is right, know that even your own enemies, they will respect you. Because the whole world knows what is right, even when people keep covering what is right, and, shading it off and putting it aside. But deep inside, in the heart of every human being, when you do the right thing, you know that you'll be respected, even if they don't show it, off, in their face. And so let's realize that, one of the ways to gain influence is to choose the path of letting go of our soul wounds. He let go of his soul wounds and allowed the healing to take place. And that made him influential. The whole world bowed because of this man. Okay, so now we have a choice to make. You have a big choice to make. You can choose to hold on to that pain, that trauma you experienced, like a precious jewel in your heart, and hold people in your heart, and then live in your narrow world. Or you can choose the path of forgiving and letting go, so that you break all those barriers around you and then attract more people unto you. So this is a serious choice that we have to make today, and we have to really think deeply about it. Yes, I always like giving my personal experiences, because many times I speak things that I've gone through to some degree and I've learned lessons from. Like I said before about my family background, growing up in a polygamous family with all the strife, around, and the issues that stem from dysfunctional families, I did not know then, but I realized later that I actually had issues with men, that I had this barrier around me about men, because I thought all men, they're all out there to just take you, for granted. They want to dominate you, they want to do all these things. And so I put up my walls very high. And so even though I had all these friends, while at school, who are males, it was really friendship, and that was it. There was a distance around me that I couldn't allow anyone to just come in. Well, I didn't know that then. Okay, so as I reached a point when I really needed to come out of my emotional wounds, I realized that actually I had the anger, towards men, because of possibly what I saw happening in my family. And so I didn't have close business associates from that work. If anyone tried to get close or tried to make me feel like, I'm inferior because of a woman, then I put up a serious fight. And of course, it was affecting my marriage, because, fights are normal. Fights are common and they are normal. But you see, the end result of a fight should not be just winning. The end result of a fight should be to influence the other person to come over to your side. So the moment a fight would come up and I would feel like, now this one is stepping into my boundaries, and he thinks he's going to take me for granted because I'm a woman. So I would put up this opposition that was way beyond now this fight we are having. You see, sometimes we draw battles from far to fight the current battle. So you end up losing on the whole essence about this battle, and you are drawing from so far. And so when a battle ends up having feeling, like they say, he's having feelings, he's having emotions. So you're having your gender emotions or your other emotions picked up from the past. Now this battle ends up being a very bad battle, because the whole point is not to provide a ground for mediation, but it's now to see who will win. And so the opposition is very serious. And so even if you end up winning that battle at that point, you know that it is just a surface thing. You feel, yes, I have won. But know that you've spewed out all your toxins, the toxins from your heart. And you've actually not won, because you haven't influenced that person to come over. Instead, you created some offense around. So these battles where you end up feeling like, oh, so he thinks it's because I am less that now he's doing this. So it ends up, creating a lot of issues. And so I made up my mind to start really reliving the experiences and letting go and forgiving and letting go. And after that, I realized a pattern that suddenly I started getting, closer friends who are men of the opposite sex, and even business associates, and all that. And I could work with them well without judging them from that point of thinking that they're always coming to dominate me or take me for granted. Okay, so I just want to throw this out there for you, that in case you seem to be having these feelings about a certain gender, then watch out. There may be something going on internally that is not yet dealt with. So the second example I give is about the issue of tribe. You see, we all come in from families where there are stories about different tribes. I'm sure all of us are familiar with that. Stories about different races. Some of them are authentic, others are not. So many times we flow with that. And it's worsened if you go out into society and, for that tribe, they're also speaking things that you had in your family. So you end up concluding and lumping, that tribal group, as the same. So I didn't know that I actually had issues with one specific tribe. And it was until one day when I went for a trip in a district that is dominated by that tribe. We went for a family trip. And within that, time, relax mode, then I started interacting, with the people. And one day as I reclined, suddenly my conscience started disturbing me. And these questions were running in my mind. But why do you hate the people from this tribe? What have they done to you? What is it, that makes you shut them out? And with each question, I seem to have an answer, but many of the answers fell flat. Because why do you hate these people? Like, they are arrogant, they are like this. And then it was like the question will lead to another. So which of them, point out which one has been arrogant to you personally, you, not to other people. Don't talk about other people's stories. Who is that has been arrogant to you? Okay, you say they mistreat people. So which of them from this tribe has mistreated you? You personally. Not your family, not your friends, not the stories you've had. And so as it went on, I realized that actually I had not been personally offended by anyone from this tribe. And I had already judged them and put them in that. And then the question went, so look around you, how many friends do you have from that tribe? And lo and behold, I hardly had any friends. And so I broke down that evening, I remember. I shed tears and I was like, oh God, forgive me. I want to repent and release, myself from this grip of believing people and moving by whatever they're saying. And so I had that interaction and I let go. Interestingly, a few weeks later, when I came back and got back to work, I had series of students coming to me to be mentored, and a number of them were from that tribe. They came and some of them were like, may I please May I please be your son? Please accept me to call you mother. To the point that actually one of them is very close, that even my own children say that, oh, that is mommy's firstborn from that tribe. The day I broke that barrier around, it seemed as if the barrier they had also against me got broken, and somehow were able to interact. And so we see when we hold lots of these tribal prejudices, nationality, racial differences, it blocks us a lot from people. And what is sad is that no one chooses the tribe they are born in. No one chooses their race. No one chooses their nationality. And yet many times we grossly judge people, and we end up missing out a lot. So when you have those barriers, you know that you will never really influence, that tribal group. You will never influence that racial group. I have seen that many of the friends I have who are really close, whom I could even entrust with my life or with my children and all that, are actually not from my tribe. And I have many people from other countries, Nigeria, India, from other nations who are close to me, that I share heart to heart with them. And so I am being helped out of, these situations. And possibly that is why the walls are, crumbling for me to be able to reach out, to some of these groups. Okay? So whenever you open your mind to people, whenever you open your heart to people, then you find that you will always have them open their hearts to you. They'll always come to you. Whenever you break barriers around you, whenever you deal with the issues of your soul, then you know that, those electromagnetic waves will become positive waves. They will become positive energy around you. And so it will draw people to you. It will make you, attract people. And when you attract people, they're attracted to you because they benefit from you. So you become influential. You start waving around, you can now start depositing your values in them, depositing your belief in them. And that is how they will be able to grow and influence others. And so it will be like a spiral. As you influence them, then they will influence others. And now this may sound gross, but I think I have no better way of saying it. That as long as your heart is wounded and is bleeding, you know that the world and life will not just allow you to spew your bleeding heart and the toxins from your heart into so many people. Life will confine you very much, because life will guard people against your bleeding heart, against, the negativity in your heart, okay? But when you release your heart, you know that out of a healed heart, then life will flow out of you, and you will become, more attractive. You will gain more influence. I look back and I see that from the point when I became more emotionally stable and, having at least degrees of healthy souls, that is when I started having a number of opportunities to interact with even more and more people. Okay? So we have a choice, a big choice to make. Okay? As long as you're still being hindered by, differences in nationalities, in tribalism, racial differences, gender differences, and those trivial things where no one has control over, as long as those are still, the in thing for you, you're still limited by that, then you know that you're really a very long way. You're still a very long way, my dear. You're still far from reaching your high potential. It is time up for you now that you break free from those confines of the wounds, from those prejudices. Some of them even just inherited and picked by association or just being projected. Okay? It's time for you to let go of that so you can live to your full life's potential. Every human being has something to offer around you. And so you cannot just be in your own small world. We need to make the world a better place to live in, and we don't have much time. And so the legacy you leave behind is about the life you have influenced, not how much wealth you have acquired, and not how high you have gone in society. And so I want to applaud you for taking this opportunity to listen to this video. And I know you are surely going to make an effort to change, to look into your heart and see those issues that seem to bar you from different people groups and different genders, so that you will be spurred to your high potential. And so I'm your host again, Dr. Violet Kayom, and I'm so happy that you've been part of us. I ask you to please, by the mercies of God, subscribe. Do subscribe, leave us a comment or two, like us, put the thumbs up. That is so good for us. And please share with your friends, share with your family. And in case you need some support, I know we have different issues and sometimes it's difficult to walk a journey alone. In case you need some support, we are available. Do leave us a comment or contact us at Living a Full Life Forum, and we'll be more than willing to walk the journey with you as you walk our journey with us. Bye. I love you all. I wish you all the best. May you enjoy life to the fullest.